Hello and welcome back to Afterglow episode 70. Going back to our normal production routine now, about 15-20 minutes, a single game. Uh, we'll have some guests on for later episodes, obviously. We had a heck of a month with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then, of course, whenever I saw the next episode was 69, we had to do an adult-oriented game. So all that is done, though. Go back and listen to them if you haven't yet. There's some really, really good stuff in there. I do have some guests scheduled to come on in the future, but the next few episodes will just be our standard episodes. And we're going to start with another NES game called Captain Skyhawk. I really like this game. A lot of people call it kind of mid, but I really enjoyed it. This is a very, very early Rare title. During that era where Rare wasn't really well known. Honestly, I think before Battletoads, not a lot of people talked about Rare, but they had some good stuff out there, and this is one of them. But we'll be talking about all that after our music break. Okay, welcome back. So my first memory of Captain Skyhawk was I was a young one at the time, and I was being babysat at a relative's house, one I didn't normally go to. I believe it was like maybe a niece, me. I don't know, to be honest. I know we're somehow related, but even to this day, I don't fully remember how. I'll have to look it up. But anyhow, she had an NES and copy of Captain Skyhawk, and the first thing that really caught my eye was the graphics of the game. The fighter jet that you pilot, almost looks polygonal. It, I mean, it wouldn't really be out of place in a PlayStation 1 game. And the level design was really cool too. If you've ever played Marble Madness, it's something similar to that, where it uses a grid based and then it angles the grid lines to show height. Really cool feature. On top of that, you can control your elevation. It is a top-down shooter with you scrolling upward, but you do control your elevation. That being said, it's best just to stay at the highest elevation that you can, in my opinion, until you reach a boss. Whenever you reach a boss, you really should drop your elevation down lower. That way you have a little bit more reaction time with them shooting at you. So you get through a level, and then something really cool happens. The game mode switches on you to something that almost looks like Afterburner from Sega. You're now behind your jet, with enemy planes flying at you and from behind you. And this is where you get your coins in the game, or your money, whatever you want to call it. For every plane that you shoot down in this mode, you get money, and that is very important for the next part of the game, which has you docking at what looks like a starbase, so I guess your jet has space travel capabilities. Don't know how that works, but hey, whatever. It's tricky, though, because this is the one area of the game I kind of disagree with. You can actually lose lives trying to dock your jet. There's a thing in the middle that's rotating, and you have to hit the button at the exact time you're lined up with that middle rotating piece in order to dock with it. One thing, whenever you get to that screen, do not hit left or right. You start out with your your Z-axis, I guess I'd call it, pretty well lined up. But if you move left and right, you're going to misalign yourself. So only move up and down, get yourself lined up, duck, and then you can use that money that you got in the bonus stage to upgrade your jet. One thing I learned early on, spend everything on the cannon. The cannon upgrade dictates how fast your main gun can fire, and you just want to max that thing out right away. You probably won't be able to max it out your first time docking, but by the time your second or third time is in there, you should be able to max out that cannon. That's totally what you want to do. The bombs and everything are secondary, but you definitely want to max out that main gun and then start buying up all of your bombs and missiles and whatnot. So after you get through all that, you start to get into kind of a variety of stages. There's 3 different stages for the overhead style. You've got the one where you'll take out the enemy base at the end. You've got the one where you're dropping like supply drops to certain markers on the map, and if you miss one, you'll loop around. And then you've got another one where you'll have to take out a different type of boss in order to pick up a scientist. But other than that, they're pretty well all the same. There's some terrain differences, and they'll do a color scheme change, but outside of those things, they're the same. But overall, I think it's fun. A lot of reviewers later on feel like the game is too samey or it gets too difficult. That does kind of get difficult, but it doesn't get insanely hard. You can beat this game if you put time into it. Now, I didn't beat it whenever I was being babysat, and it took a very, very long time before I found this game again at a rental store, and I would rent it every once in a while. Apparently, there was a commercial for this game. I didn't know about it. I had never seen this commercial, but whenever I was doing my research for this episode on YouTube, I did indeed find both a 15-second and a 30-second commercial. The 15-second one was just a cut-down version of the longer one, but I want to go ahead and play the longer one for you now, because I think it's like a cool piece of NES history, and it's kind of funny listening to the announcer guys. So let's take a listen.
It's the flight of your life! Captain Skyhawk for your Nintendo! Captain Skyhawk is the only air combat game with a spy satellite view of the action. More weapons, more missions over more terrain than any other flying ace. Do you have what it takes to airdrop supplies, rescue scientists, destroy aliens, and save Earth from certain doom? It takes the hottest fighter pilot ever. Now air combat soars to incredible new heights with Captain Skyhawk for your Nintendo.
Couple things I want to bring up there. He never just says the name of the game. It's not Captain Skyhawk. It's Captain Skyhawk for your Nintendo. Every time. It's like they're really, really pushing that. And the other thing, they call it a spy satellite view for the overhead sections, which kind of an interesting way of describing it. I always would just call it an overhead mode, but no, in this commercial it's a spy satellite mode. Interesting choice there. But after running this game a few times, I never actually bought a copy of it. I did go back and emulate it a few times. Should I play the clip? Well, you know the clip by now, right? It's funny, though.
Do what you want, 'cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate. You're hard-fitted indeed. Being a pirate is a right indeed. Do what you want, 'cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate. You are a pirate.
Definitely getting my money's worth out of that clip, right? But yes, I did indeed emulate this game. I did eventually get a copy of it, again, early 2000s, so I got most of my NES collection. And I did eventually beat it. I had to use a Game Genie to beat it, though. I could not beat it early on without that Game Genie. I actually ended up finally beating it without a Game Genie this year. I sat down to play it for this episode and actually managed to do a run of it. So I'm pretty happy with the result on that. But it's a fun game in my opinion. It's often overlooked. You can definitely get that rare feel in a way. Like it feels like a rare game. It does feel like an early one. I did see some people complaining about the controls of it because the plane will keep moving a little bit after you let go, but that kind of makes sense to me because, you know, momentum. Mario does the same thing in Super Mario Brothers, but yet no one complains about that. And the other thing they complained about is there is a barrel roll maneuver that you can use with the select button. A lot of people don't see use for it, and I'm kind of one of them. I play the game completely without that barrel roll, but it's not necessary to beat the game. It's just a flashy little thing, in my opinion. But that is my memories of Captain Skyhawk. You should definitely go back and take a look at it if you haven't yet. Give it a play. Maybe it's your thing, maybe it's not, but I do think it's a really enjoyable experience. So we're going to play one more music track from the game. Before I play that music track, I do want to say, though, there's not much music in this game. Most of the levels are just the sounds of all the effects of the game, you shooting and explosions and whatnot. There is some boss music, there's some title music, there's a you win at the end of the level music kind of deal, but other than that, there's not a whole lot of music in this game, so I guess it was pretty easy to pick the music, right? So let's take a listen to one of the very few tracks in this game before we roll the outro. Welcome back, and thank you once again for listening to another episode of Afterglow. Hope you enjoyed this one. This is a game that I don't think is talked about nearly enough, so I hope it gets a little bit more attention. I think it's really, really good for an NES game. It was kind of a later release. I believe it came out in '90, but I think it's really good, even though a lot of people kind of overlook it. But if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out the show notes page where we have our Discord, and you can also support the show at Patreon. There's also a huge backlog if you want to go check out a ton of other episodes. We've got a few specials as well as a few others with some special guests on. So if you enjoyed what you listened to, be sure to go back and check that out. If you're looking for more podcast goodness, check out friends of the show like Retro Gaming Roundup. They're one of the longest running retro gaming podcasts out there today. Their shows are really long, 5 to 8 hours. Definitely best to take it on in chunks, but they release once a month. All kinds of good stuff in there. Secret Levels, they release bi-weekly, covering one game per episode. Very, very entertaining show to listen to. Also, be sure to check out the Lost and Gone podcast with Grim. He likes to cover lost and forgotten media. Always an interesting tale whenever he drops another episode. He's got a new one that he's working on that will be very, very interesting, that goes over some Fallout lore. Going back to Afterglow, our show logo is done by TobyVonDoom, who is on the Secret Levels podcast, and our intro and outro music is done by Grim from the Lost and Gone podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and tune back in hopefully next week where we'll have a fresh episode of Afterglow.